The story starts with Woo Hyun waking up and realizing that he's not dead. As he looks around, he spots a beautiful girl lying unconscious next to him. Intrigued, he approaches her and asks about her condition. To his surprise, she turns out to be an angel and is equally taken aback by his ability to see her. As they begin to talk, Woo Hyun realizes that the angel girl is more concerned about finding her lost death book than her own well-being. Outside the hospital, Woo Hyun asks for her contact details, but she simply points to the sky, claiming that's where her home is. This leaves Woo Hyun baffled, as he had no idea that humans could reside in the heavens. As the female angel looked across the street, she noticed a male angel escorting a grandfather to the afterlife. Intrigued, she called out to him and explained the situation. She had just saved Woo Hyun from death, but had lost her death book in the process. The male angel was surprised and worried, as the loss of a death book could have dire consequences. Seeing the concern on their faces, Woo Hyun quickly took charge and escorted the female angel to the police station. However, to their dismay, she couldn't remember anything about herself, not her name, address, or date of birth. Woo Hyun found himself at an office where he met Woo Jin, who commended him for giving first aid to a man who had fainted earlier. During their conversation, Woo Jin asked about the female angel's name. Confused, the angel looked at a bottle and said her name was Lee Seul. When asked about her surname, she glanced at a magazine on the table and said it was Bi. With a smile, she then introduced herself as Lee Seul Bi. As they were about to part ways, Seul Bi suddenly grabbed Woo Hyun's hand. To their surprise, Jin Young's mother appeared with a teacher, accusing Woo Hyun of causing her son to attempt suicide. To prevent the situation from escalating, Woo Jin intervened and asked Jin Young's mother to resolve the matter peacefully. As the tension in the room mounted, Seul Bi suddenly interjected, accusing Jin Young's mother of being a bad parent and claiming to have witnessed Woo Hyun helping Jin Young upstairs. Frustrated with Seul Bi's lack of manners, Woo Hyun promptly escorted her out of the building. Despite Woo Hyun's efforts, Jin Young's mother remained steadfast in her intention to sue him. As evening descended, Woo Hyun's grandmother sat counting her earnings from the day's sales, with Seul Bi perched next to her in her grandmother's clothes. Woo Hyun arrived, and his grandmother presented him with a gift from his father. Inside were shoes, which Woo Hyun begrudgingly handed over to Seul Bi, who graciously thanked him. But Seul Bi's innocent questions about his family soon shattered the peace of the evening. She asked if his father had sent the gift from America and where his mother was. Woo Hyun's face turned cold, and his grandmother quickly changed the subject, urging him to rest since it was late. As Woo Hyun prepared to leave, Seul Bi asked to sleep together, offering a pillow. But Woo Hyun refused, acutely aware of the impropriety of such a request between unmarried men and women without a familial bond. As Woo Hyun left the house, his grandmother warned Seul Bi not to mention anything about Woo Hyun's mother or face being kicked out. Determined to see Jin Young, Woo Hyun snuck out despite it being late at night. Jin Young apologized for the incident with her mother earlier that day and promised to stay away from Woo Hyun to prevent him from getting expelled. Just as Woo Hyun was about to leave, Jin Young grabbed his hand and hugged him, offering to protect him from her mother's wrath. Unknown to them, Seul Bi had followed Woo Hyun and was secretly watching from behind a tree. Woo Hyun noticed her and called out to her. He then asked Jin Young to leave as his girlfriend had arrived. He gently let go of Jin Young's embrace and embraced Seul Bi instead, asking her to leave with him. The following day, Jin Young's mother arrived with a letter demanding that Woo Hyun be transferred out of school immediately to avoid affecting Jin Young's grades. Woo Hyun confronted her, asking why she wanted him to transfer. The mother insisted that he should leave because he had asked to meet Jin Young the previous night. Seul Bi quickly intervened, stating that it was Jin Young who had asked to see Woo Hyun. Despite Woo Hyun's plea for Seul Bi to stay out of it, Jin Young's mother threatened to sue him for 10 million won if he did not transfer. Grandma wasn't having any of it, grabbing a spatula and chasing Jin Young's mother away. Seul Bi, not to be outdone, took an even bigger spatula and joined in the chase. Woo Hyun was infuriated that Seul Bi had interfered with his problems yet again, so he angrily asked her to come out while holding her hand. He told her that he was annoyed and didn't know her, demanding that she leave him alone. However, Seul Bi explained that she was upset by Jin Young's mother's behavior and that she only wanted to help him. She pleaded with him not to go, but Woo Hyun insisted that he would leave if she didn't. Seul Bi, not wanting to be left alone, remained silent as she watched Woo Hyun walk away. Feeling lost and alone, Seul Bi aimlessly wandered the streets. Meanwhile, at home, Woo Hyun threw away Seul Bi's clothes in a fit of anger. As night fell, Seul Bi searched through the trash for something to eat and stumbled upon a broken doll lying in the garbage. She felt a deep connection to the discarded toy, both of them thrown away and abandoned. As the rain poured down, Seul Bi sought shelter and stumbled upon Song Yeol enjoying a bowl of noodles outside a convenience store. She couldn't take her eyes off him, but he eventually left due to her uncomfortable stare. Feeling betrayed by Woo Hyun despite having saved him, Seul Bi shouted in frustration before aimlessly wandering along the roadside. Lost without her death book and unsure of how to return to being an angel, Seul Bi contemplated a drastic decision upon seeing a speeding car. Without a second thought, she stepped onto the road, hoping to return to her angelic state through death. Luckily, Woo Hyun arrived in time to save her, but was upset with Seul Bi for her reckless behavior. After inviting her to leave with him, he realized she wasn't following and turned to find her standing behind him. As they walked together, Woo Hyun's anger subsided and Seul Bi couldn't help but smile. The following day, Seul Bi surprised everyone by showing up to school wearing Woo Hyun's uniform. Despite having thrown it away, Woo Hyun asked Seul Bi to change, but Grandma intervened and gave them both money for new uniforms. Seul Bi was thrilled, but Woo Hyun threatened not to buy her a new one if she didn't change out of his old uniform. Meanwhile, Song Yeol was celebrating his birthday with his stepmother Ji-hae and friend Woo Jin at a cafe near the school. Ji-hae confessed to wanting to give Song Yeol a gift but didn't because she was afraid he wouldn't like it. However, he remained indifferent and looked out the window. Seul Bi and Woo Hyun happened to pass by with Ji-hae, who quickly turned away since she was a teacher at their school. Song Yeol felt uncomfortable that his friends saw him eating with the teacher. Song Yeol quickly left the cafe, followed by Ji-hae, who didn't care if their students saw them together. Suddenly, a thief stole Ji-hae's bag and ran off. Without hesitation, Seul Bi ran after the thief, with Woo Hyun following close behind. They eventually cornered the thief in a small alley, but he grabbed a wooden block and was about to strike when Seul Bi used her powers to stop him. However, after using her powers, Seul Bi collapsed. Woo Jin arrived and apprehended the thief while Song Yeol, who had just arrived, was surprised to see Seul Bi almost falling. Woo Hyun tried to revive Seul Bi, but she remained unconscious. He then carried her back home. The following day, Woo Hyun found himself in a new school where he introduced himself to the class. The teacher then instructed him to sit next to Chon-sig. Woo Hyun greeted Chon-sig with a high five, but Chon-sig refused to reciprocate due to his fear of being bullied by Jae-sog and his gang. Later, one of Jae-sog's friends invited Chon-sig to the bathroom, and he reluctantly followed. It was revealed that anyone who sat next to a new student in that school was bullied by others. Meanwhile, water suddenly flooded the bathroom and Jae-sog demanded that Chon-sig step on the water to get out. Song Yeol, who was also in the bathroom, intervened and convinced Jae-sog to return to class, reminding him of the ethics class and the consequences of skipping it. Eventually, Jae-sog relented and left the bathroom. Chon-sig was the first to arrive in class and took his seat, while Woo Hyun entered shortly after him, followed by the tardy Song Yeol. However, Ji-hae, the teacher, showed no mercy and ordered both latecomers to leave the class. Outside, Song Yeol unexpectedly attacked Woo Hyun, but before he could react, Ji-hae intervened and stopped the altercation. Fed up with Song Yeol's behavior, Ji-hae slapped him and ordered both students to run around the field as punishment. During the run, Song Yeol abruptly asked Woo Hyun to hit him, which he did, keeping the second punch as a souvenir. The next day was swimming class, but since Woo Hyun couldn't swim, he pretended to be sick. The teacher allowed him to skip the class but ordered him to clean the pool afterward. Jae-sog, a known bully, noticed Woo Hyun's weakness and took advantage of the situation by offering to help him clean the pool. Woo Hyun was enjoying a relaxing day at the pool when his friend Jae-sog suddenly pushed him in, laughing as he watched Woo Hyun struggle in the water. Just as things seemed to be getting dangerous, Seul Bi arrived and jumped in to help. But the situation quickly turned dire as both Woo Hyun and Seul Bi began to drown. Thankfully, Song Yeol was nearby and immediately jumped in to save them both. The next day, Woo Hyun realized that the necklace he always wore was missing and began to search everywhere for it. Even at school, he had no luck finding it. Meanwhile, Seul Bi's grandmother told her to register for school, so she went to the police station to give her personal information. As she was doing so, a mysterious man suddenly appeared and gave her an envelope containing updated documents. Though she was initially suspicious, the man convinced her to exchange the documents, even though she still didn't fully trust him. It was just another day at school when Jae-sog decided to make amends with Woo Hyun by leaving a drink on his desk as an apology. But Woo Hyun, still angry, called Jae-sog a coward, which only served to escalate the situation. Before they knew it, a fight had broken out, with Jae-seok grabbing Woo Hyun and tensions running high. Just as things were getting out of hand, the teacher walked in with Seul Bi in tow. Seul Bi saw what was happening and didn't hesitate to take action, biting Jae-seok's hand to stop the fight. The teacher quickly intervened and asked Seul Bi to introduce herself to the class. To everyone's surprise, Seul Bi revealed that she and Woo Hyun were living together and asked to sit next to him. Later during gym class, the girls were playing catch when one of them threw the ball too hard, hitting Seul Bi. In a split second, Woo Hyun appeared out of nowhere, blocking the ball and whisking Seul Bi away to safety.
제대로 하는 게 없으면 사고로 치지 말든가. 어? 인간 그렇게 쉽게 죽지 않는다.
Seul Bi headed to the swimming pool after school, hoping to find the missing necklace. Soon enough, Song-yeol appeared and questioned her presence there. When Seul Bi told him the reason for her visit, Song-yeol went to get the pool key to help her search. However, knowing that Seul Bi couldn't swim, he suggested that she go home and leave the search to him. As Seul Bi left, Song-yeol dove into the pool and miraculously found the missing necklace. Later that day, Ji arrived at Song-yeol's room with food and noticed the necklace. Her curiosity piqued, she asked about it, and Song-yeol replied with a cynical tone that it belonged to a friend of his. One afternoon, Woo Hyun was out shopping with his friend when he unexpectedly ran into Ji, his teacher. As they were leaving, Ji followed Woo Hyun home and was surprised to see his grandmother outside of a shop. It was then that she realized that Woo Hyun was actually her son. Meanwhile, Seul Bi was walking home, delighted to have acquired Woo Hyun's necklace. However, her joy was short-lived when she was struck by a bicycle coming from the opposite direction. The impact caused Seul Bi to fall, and the necklace rolled into a nearby gutter. As she tried to retrieve it, a man splashed water on her, causing the necklace to fall further out of reach. Seul Bi struggled to get her hand into the gutter and lift the necklace, but it proved to be too difficult. Just when Seul Bi thought all hope was lost, a male angel named Sonbae appeared to help her. With his help, Seul Bi was finally able to retrieve the necklace. Seul Bi walked towards the house with a noticeable limp. When Woo Hyun saw her, he was filled with panic and approached her immediately. In a state of worry and anger, he demanded to know where Seul Bi had been. Despite the tense moment, Seul Bi managed to smile and pull out the necklace she had retrieved for him. She then put it around Woo Hyun's neck, much to his surprise. Meanwhile, Sonbae was watching the two of them from a distance. When Seul Bi noticed him, she ran towards him, but he kept avoiding her and eventually disappeared. As Woo Hyun approached Seul Bi, he found that Sonbae was nowhere to be seen. He was shocked and asked Seul Bi if her memory had returned, but she did not answer. Suddenly, Seul Bi fainted. When Woo Hyun arrived home, he immediately began to tend to Seul Bi's health. Seul Bi smiled and jokingly told him that he looked like a doctor. The following day, Seul Bi was feeling much better and enjoying the morning sun. As Woo Hyun pulled out his cell phone, Seul Bi eagerly opened her hands and made a pleading face, hoping that he would give it to her. Woo Hyun handed over the phone, and Seul Bi began to explore its features. When she discovered the camera, she took a photo of Woo Hyun. He was not pleased and asked her to delete the picture. Seul Bi innocently explained that she just wanted to save it so that she could look at it when he wasn't around. Woo Hyun was touched by her words and immediately embraced her, inviting her to take a picture together. Their photo turned out to be perfect. During lunchtime at school, Seul Bi found herself sitting at the same table as Woo Hyun and Ki-soo. Woo Hyun started to taste the soup and noticed something strange about it. Ki-soo explained that the menu had been changed from anchovy soup to crab soup without their knowledge. Meanwhile, Ji was sitting at another table, staring intently at Woo Hyun while eating with the music teacher and another female teacher. The female teacher was surprised when Ji didn't eat and asked her why. However, Ji, still looking seriously at Woo Hyun, suddenly felt sick and had to be taken to the hospital. Ji and Woo Hyun found themselves in the same hospital room, but it was clear that Woo Hyun was in a worse condition. As Ji moved the curtain to get a closer look at his face, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was her son. They even shared the same allergy. Just then, Seul Bi and their grandmother rushed in, with the panicked grandmother lamenting that Woo Hyun had inherited his allergies from that woman. Seul Bi tried to calm her down by sharing a similar experience from one of her teachers. Despite the commotion, Woo Hyun was conscious and eager to leave the hospital, which he despised. As they all left, Ji couldn't help but watch her supposed son's departure from behind a nearby wall, still unsure if her gut feeling was correct. The following day, Jae-seok and his buddies were eagerly awaiting Cheon-sig's arrival in class. Jae-seok tossed a book at Cheon-sig, who was carrying a bag, with the expectation that he would catch it in the bag. If he missed, he would owe Jae-seok 10,000 won. Sensing trouble, Woo Hyun pulled Seul Bi aside and asked her to go out with Cheon-sig. Suddenly, Song-yeol appeared and slipped some money into Jae-seok's pocket, suggesting he use it to go clubbing. Furious, Jae-seok flung the cash away. In the heat of the moment, Jae-seok accused Song-yeol of not helping him when he was struggling and instead letting him sink. Song Yeol responded by telling Jae-seok he should have let him die, despite Jae-seok's inevitable defeat. He then yanked his hand away from Jae-seok with all his might. Enraged, Jae-seok lashed out by kicking Song Yeol's locker, only to be caught in the act by their teacher. While cleaning his wound in the restroom, Song Yeol was approached by Woo Hyun, who inquired about the bad blood between him and Jae-seok. Concerned about Song Yeol's injured hand, Woo Hyun asked how it happened, but Song Yeol refused to say and quickly left. Meanwhile, Jae-seok was being questioned in the teacher's room about kicking Song Yeol's locker. But before the interrogation could be concluded, the phone rang. It was the math teacher, who urgently needed a USB drive from the laptop delivered to him. Then, the phone rang again, and it was the chairman of the board with another urgent task. In a bind, the teacher asked Seok-hoon to deliver the USB drive to the math teacher instead, which allowed Jae-seok to be released with only a warning not to repeat his behavior. In the schoolyard, Jae-seok confronted Seok-hoon, who was looking at the USB with the math exam questions. Jae-seok snatched Seok-hoon's phone and demanded that he give him all the answers during the exam. Seok-hoon complied. And the next day during the exam, Jae-seok kicked Seok-hoon's chair until he handed over the answer sheet. Jae, who was distributing the exam papers, noticed that Jae-seok had 2 answer sheets and demanded to know who gave him the extra one. To everyone's surprise, Jae-seok pointed to Song Yeol, who had been closing his eyes and trying to avoid attention. After school, Woo Hyun approached Jae, feeling guilty for accusing Song Yeol of cheating. He revealed that he saw Jae-seok and Seok-hoon doing something suspicious and suggested that Song Yeol might have been covering for them by writing the answers using his injured hand. Jae was stunned by the revelation, and Woo Hyun promised to find evidence to clear Song Yeol's name. Before leaving, Jae suddenly became caring towards Woo Hyun, asking about his health and instructing him to buy allergy and cold medicine. Woo Hyun was taken aback by her sudden kindness, but thanked her nonetheless. Woo Hyun was desperately searching for Jae-seok when he stumbled upon a shocking scene. He saw Jae-seok's father pull up in his car and almost hit his son in a fit of rage. Jae-seok's father accused his son of cheating to get good grades and left him feeling humiliated and defeated. Woo Hyun watched from behind a wall, feeling helpless and afraid of being seen. Later that day, Jae-seok and his friends brutally beat Woo Hyun, blaming him for their academic dishonesty. But Woo Hyun refused to take the fall for their cheating and demanded that Jae-seok confess the truth. The situation took a surprising turn when Seul Bi called, and Jae-seok answered. Jae-seok quickly made up a lie to impress Seul Bi, but Woo Hyun knew that the truth was at stake and yelled for her not to come. Seul Bi sensed that something was wrong and immediately contacted Song Yeol for help. She rushed to the park, worried for Woo Hyun's safety. In the park, tensions boiled over as Jae-seok revved up his motorcycle, ready to strike Woo Hyun. Seul Bi and Song Yeol arrived just in time to stop Jae-seok, with Seul Bi using her powers to turn off the motorcycle. But the effort took a toll on Seul Bi, who collapsed from exhaustion, prompting Song Yeol to rush to her aid. With Seul Bi out of harm's way, Song Yeol charged at Jae-seok, and the two clashed in a heated brawl. The following day, during recess, Seul Bi pleaded with Jae-seok to leave Woo Hyun alone. But Jae-seok remained defiant until Seul Bi, with her gentle and kind demeanor, offered him a band-aid and urged him not to cause harm to anyone again. In the evening, Ye-na visited Woo Hyun's shop to give him a gift, but instead stumbled upon Woo Hyun and Seul Bi cooking intimately in the kitchen. Seul Bi later went out to take out the trash and discovered Ye-na helplessly limping outside. They ended up having a conversation where Ye-na confessed her love for Woo Hyun, leaving Seul Bi speechless. When Woo Hyun called Seul Bi, she couldn't bring herself to answer in front of Ye-na. Later, when Woo Hyun noticed Seul Bi limping, he gave her his monthly salary, but Seul Bi felt a strange sensation in her chest. The next day, Woo Hyun called out to Seul Bi during the end of sports time, but she ignored him while cleaning up the balls. In another part of town, Jae arrived at a tavern to meet with her grandmother. She desperately pleaded with her grandmother to transfer Woo Hyun to a different school because her stepdaughter also attended the same school. However, her request only enraged her grandmother, who was aware of the suffering Woo Hyun had endured. In a fit of anger, her grandmother poured a bucket of water over Jae as she attempted to hand her an envelope of money. As Woo Hyun, Seul Bi, and Song Yeol were on their way home, they saw Jae receiving the envelope back from her grandmother. Concerned about their friend, Woo Hyun immediately approached them. Seeing Woo Hyun, Jae's grandmother panicked and quickly explained that Jae had left the envelope behind before inviting Woo Hyun into the shop. Soon after, Ki-soo walked into the shop and invited Woo Hyun to go cycling in the park the next day. It turned out that Ki-soo had been coerced by Ye-na's friend, Yong-eun, into setting up a date between Ye-na and Woo Hyun. Excited by the idea, Seul Bi suggested that they invite Song Yeol to come along as well. Back at home, Ji stared at her necklace and thought about Woo Hyun. She remembered the time when she gave him a key-shaped necklace and promised that they would meet again. Overwhelmed by these memories, Ji couldn't help but cry. The following day, Woo Hyun, Seul Bi, Sung-yeol, Ye-na, Hee-soo, and Yong-eun gathered at the park for their bike ride. As Woo Hyun and Sung-yeol took their bikes, Ye-na grabbed Seul Bi and insisted on confessing her feelings to Woo Hyun alone. She asked Seul Bi not to interfere, leaving Seul Bi feeling hurt and ignored. While Ye-na enjoyed her time with Woo Hyun, she decided to reveal her feelings to him. But Woo Hyun, feeling uncomfortable, stopped his bike and immediately turned down her confession. He got off his bike and asked Seul Bi to come with him, leaving Ye-na behind. Ye-na watched from afar, feeling even sadder after witnessing Woo Hyun reject her confession. Seul Bi, confused by the situation, quickly left, leaving behind a chaotic mess. The news of the incident spread like wildfire, and the next day, Woo Hyun was welcomed with cheers from his friends. Seul Bi, on the other hand, was met with gossip and rumors as she entered the classroom. Luckily, a teacher arrived and put an end to the chatter. After school, Seul Bi discovered that the shop was closed. As she stood there, Woo Hyun approached her from behind and informed her that his grandma was on vacation. However, he soon revealed that his grandma had lied to him and was actually undergoing chemotherapy in the hospital. The doctor had advised her to be hospitalized, but she postponed it for a few days because she wanted to take care of something first. When Woo Hyun called her, she ignored him, and it was clear that she was preoccupied with something serious. The next day, Seul Bi arrived early at school to clean up the classroom. Suddenly, Seul Bi appeared with an angel book and urged Seul Bi to sign it so she could regain her angel status in a week. Later, Seul Bi decided to become an angel again, and as she touched the book, Ye-na called and expressed her despair because Woo Hyun didn't choose her. Seul Bi met with Ye-na and listened to her cries while offering apologies. She even bought Ye-na a drink, but when Seul Bi left, Ye-na peeked into Seul Bi's bag. The next day, Ye-na was frantically searching through her locker, convinced that her cell phone was missing. Despite her friend Yong-eun's help, they couldn't find the phone. Ye-na then turned to her classmate Seul Bi, hoping she might know where it was. Seul Bi was unsure and told Ye-na that she didn't remember seeing it. Just then, Yong-eun blurted out that there was a thief in their midst. The tension in the classroom was palpable, especially after Jae-sog's threat had caused most of the students to leave. Unknown to everyone else, Cheon-sig was quietly placing his own phone into Seul Bi's bag. The situation escalated when Cheon-sig raised his hand, looking nervous, and told the teacher that his phone and money had been stolen. The teacher immediately ordered everyone to put their bags on the table for a thorough check. Seul Bi was startled to find a foreign cell phone in her bag, and before she could react, Jae-sog, one of the gang members, accused her of stealing Cheon-sig's phone. The teacher intervened and asked Cheon-sig to check the phone, which he confirmed was his. Just as the situation seemed to be resolved, Ye-na reported that her phone was also missing. The teacher then turned his attention to Seul Bi and asked her to empty her bag. To everyone's surprise, they found not only Ye-na's phone but also a wallet inside Seul Bi's bag. Seul Bi weakly protested her innocence, but the teacher took Seul Bi, Ye-na, and Cheon-sig to the counseling room to discuss the matter further. Mr. Kim, the counselor, asked Seul Bi to confess, but she continued to maintain her innocence. Mr. Kim nodded in response and asked Seul Bi to reflect on her behavior. After the meeting, Seul Bi approached Ye-na and asked if their friendship had all been an act. Ye-na, rejecting Seul Bi's hand, revealed that she never wanted to be friends with Seul Bi because she believed that Seul Bi was a disaster waiting to happen. As Seul Bi was wandering in the hallway, Woo Hyun suddenly appeared and dragged her to a secluded spot. Despite Seul Bi's attempts to explain her innocence, Woo Hyun remained skeptical and they ended up having a heated argument. Feeling hurt and betrayed, Seul Bi stormed off, leaving Woo Hyun behind. In the days following the incident, Seul Bi became the target of intense bullying from her classmates. Her locker was filled with garbage and she was subjected to constant harassment in class. Witnessing the cruelty of her peers, Woo Hyun became increasingly furious. Things came to a head when Jae-sog taunted Woo Hyun and a fight broke out.
Everybody all stop!
The teacher intervened and demanded that the students bring their parents to school the next day to address the situation. The next day, Woo Hyun's grandmother, who was in pain, accompanied her to the school's meeting room. There, they were surprised to see Woo Jin, who had come to defend Seul Bi. Soon after, the parents of the other boys, including Jae-sog's father, arrived. Seul Bi's grandmother apologized for Woo Hyun's behavior, and Ji-hae, accompanied by her son and the others, joined the meeting. However, Jae-sog's father insulted Woo Hyun and threatened him, which caused Sung-yeol to stand up for his friend. The teacher intervened and asked them to leave the room. After they left, Seul Bi bravely confessed that she had been falsely accused of stealing and had suffered from Jae-sog's bullying. Jae-sog's father felt embarrassed and promised to discipline his son. As the night settled in, Seul Bi sat on the rooftop lost in her book, admiring the stars. Abruptly, Woo Hyun materialized, sending her into a frenzy. In an effort to explain herself, Seul Bi claimed she was stargazing. The two exchanged words and apologies, and in that moment, made a pact to always trust each other regardless of the circumstances that lay ahead. Later, after Woo Hyun had departed, Seul Bi unexpectedly encountered Sonbae. He delivered a disconcerting message: Seul Bi's presence in the human world would bring harm to those around her. Sonbae implored Seul Bi to return to her original home before it was too late. As the class came to an end, Seul Bi unexpectedly issued a heartfelt apology to her classmates. Her words conveyed a sense of finality, leaving the entire class stunned and bewildered by her sudden departure. Meanwhile, Woo Hyun was serving his sentence, and in an effort to make amends, he wrote 2,000 apologies. Meanwhile, Grandma sought out Jie and begged her to forgive and pass Woo Hyun, as he was her biological son. However, Jie refused, feeling frustrated with her mother's incessant meddling in her life. Having finally found peace and tranquility, she refused to let anyone disrupt her newfound serenity and left Grandma without a word of explanation. That fateful night, Grandma was preparing to leave when Woo Hyun caught her trying to discard her belongings. Sensing his grandmother's intentions, Woo Hyun tenderly embraced her, cherishing the scent of her clothes. Overwhelmed with emotion, Grandma could no longer hold back her tears and in a moment of desperation, implored Woo Hyun to take a shower to mask her crying. The following day, the trio went on a picnic in the park, and Woo Hyun and Seul Bi reveled in their carefree playfulness. But their joy was short-lived when Grandma's illness suddenly resurfaced, causing her to faint. Reacting quickly, Woo Hyun and Seul Bi sprang into action, rushing her to the hospital in a desperate attempt to save her life. As they sat by Grandma's bedside at the hospital, Woo Hyun and Seul Bi watched over her unconscious form. When she finally regained consciousness, she recalled that her granddaughter despised the hospital's sterile scent and asked Woo Hyun to retrieve her forgotten bag from home. Without hesitation, Woo Hyun left to fulfill her request, entrusting Seul Bi to care for Grandma in his absence. However, tragedy struck when Woo Hyun received a fateful phone call, and he sprinted back to the hospital carrying Grandma's bag. When he arrived at the treatment room, it was too late. Grandma had passed away.
그만 자고 일어나봐. 나 못 보면 못 산다며. 일어나봐. 이분이.
Witnessing her spirit depart, Seul Bi gave chase and encountered Sonbae, imploring him to delay her departure so that she could bid a proper farewell to Woo Hyun. But Sonbae remained firm in his duties, leaving Seul Bi's plea unanswered. The next day at the funeral home, Seul Bi appeared in her angel outfit and realized that it was her last day on Earth. She quickly gave Song-yeol a meteor stone and a CD, which she said could grant his wish. Seul Bi then said her goodbyes and prepared to return to where she came from. While shaking hands with Song-yeol, Woo Hyun walked in and saw them hugging.
모두 왜 나한테 이별을 말하는지.
Seul Bi waited for him outside the toilet, but he was still upset and ignored her. At the funeral, Woo Hyun said his final goodbye to his grandmother, while Seul Bi, grandmother, and Sonbae watched from the other side with a pained expression. Before leaving, grandmother advised Seul Bi to take care of herself and leave her granddaughter in her care. After completing her mission, Sonbae returned to take Seul Bi back with him. As she vanished, Seul Bi looked at Woo Hyun from a distance, marking the end of their time together. As Seul Bi strolled alongside Sonbae, she abruptly halted and handed him her black book. Her apologies followed, as she regretted her inability to return to being an angel. With tears streaming down his face, Sonbae watched as Seul Bi pivoted and made her way over to Woo Hyun, who she implored to cry with her. The next day, Mr. Yoon was taken aback upon discovering Mr. Kim's resignation letter in the teacher's room. Deciding to shield the principal from the truth, Mr. Yoon fibbed about Mr. Kim being on temporary leave. Upon hearing this, the principal requested that Mr. Yoon assume Mr. Kim's role as homeroom teacher. Seul Bi arrived at Woo Hyun's room in the evening, bringing some food for him to eat. However, Woo Hyun, overwhelmed by sadness, spilled the food accidentally. Seul Bi suppressed her own emotions and began to clean up the mess, urging Woo Hyun to try to overcome his difficulties. She expressed her helplessness, unsure of what more she could do to support him in his struggle. The next morning, a frequent customer at Woo Hyun grandmother's shop suddenly came to the shop and immediately ordered a tteokbokki. Seul Bi also remembers one of the men she had met at the police station. The man that introduced himself, he was Song-guk. He said that he used to be an angel and now he is the chairman of the Human Angel Committee. Seeing Seul Bi still in disbelief, Song-guk took his cell phone and asked Seul Bi to look at her cell phone. Song-guk sent a message to Seul Bi to call and ask him anything. One more important thing, Song-guk reminded him to be careful so that his former angelic identity would not be revealed. Then Song-guk left because he had important business. Shortly after, Song-yeol arrived with some food for Woo Hyun, and Seul Bi, who was checking his bag, asked if it was homemade by his mother. Despite feeling uneasy, Song-yeol admitted that it was. He expressed gratitude for having his parents still alive and being able to see them anytime. That night, two strangers showed up, claiming to be looking for Woo Hyun's father, who had borrowed money from them. They barged into the house and created chaos. When Woo Hyun emerged from his room, they informed him that his father had used the shop as collateral for a loan and was nowhere to be found. Furious and in disbelief, Woo Hyun quickly kicked them out, knowing full well that he was not responsible for his father's actions. The two men, infuriated by their confrontation with Woo Hyun, took legal action against him and they all found themselves at the police station. One of the men presented the loan agreement to the officer, emphasizing that they were simply carrying out what was stated in the contract. They also threatened Woo Hyun, insisting that he pay his father's debts. Fortunately, Woo Jin intervened and asked Song-yeol to take Woo Hyun home, averting any further conflict. The following day, Seul Bi, desperate to prevent her grandmother's shop from being seized by debt collectors, began taking on part-time jobs. She worked in restaurants, clothing stores, and even as a babysitter. Despite her best efforts, she struggled to keep up with the workload and was eventually fired. However, her luck changed when she saw a lost dog poster with a 500,000 won prize. She searched tirelessly and found the dog in the dump. When two thugs threatened her and demanded payment for Woo Hyun's father's debt, Seul Bi bravely handed over her hard-earned money, but it wasn't enough. One of the thugs grabbed her face and threatened her until Woo Hyun intervened. Frustrated, Woo Hyun pushed Seul Bi down, but Sonbae threw a pot at him in anger. The scene opens with Chon-sig exiting the teacher's room and being confronted by Ye-na. He confesses that he put his cell phone in Seul Bi's bag, which prompts Ye-na to ask if he's afraid of being beaten by Jae-seok. Although Chon-sig admits to being afraid, he vows to stop being a coward and walks away from Ye-na. Later, Woo Hyun and Seul Bi enter the classroom, where Ye-na greets Woo Hyun but he does not return the greeting. Feeling upset, Ye-na decides to apologize to Woo Hyun in a message, confessing that she was the one who put her cell phone in Seul Bi's bag. However, before she can finish writing the message, Yong-eun snatches her cell phone and exposes Ye-na's intentions. When Mr. Yoon walked in, Yong-eun, who was angry with Ye-na, pointed the finger at her and claimed that Ye-na was the one who put the phone in Seul Bi's bag. Her plan was to set Seul Bi up. Mr. Yoon immediately intervened and asked everyone to put their bags on the table and rearrange the seating plan. As a result, Woo Hyun ended up sharing a table with Ye-na, while Seul Bi sat with Song-yeol. During the break, Seul Bi went to the library to search for a book about angels. Woo Hyun saw her struggling and offered to help her find the book. That's when he noticed a book titled All Things About Angels Who Have Become Humans on the shelf. As Seul Bi was looking at the book, it suddenly fell, and she suspected Sonbae was behind it. She confronted him, asking why he did such a dangerous thing. She reminded him that an angel's job is to save people, not to harm them. However, instead of answering her, Song-yeol disappeared. Woo Hyun was surprised to find out that Seul Bi was actually an angel. Woo Hyun returned to the library and began to read the book that Seul Bi had taken. There Woo Hyun remembered when he fell from the roof first, and Seul Bi was the one who saved him. Then Song-guk appeared, who dropped several books in front of Woo Hyun. Song-guk asked Woo Hyun to be quiet and hide what Woo Hyun knew. Sonbae, who was behind them, started using his power again. Song-guk immediately approached Sonbae and asked him to leave. Outside the room, Song-guk told Sonbae that he was the first angel to become human. While angry, Song-guk asked if Sonbae was jealous that Seul Bi was close to humans. Sonbae firmly replied, "No angel is jealous of humans, humans are just lowly creatures." If he's not jealous, Song-guk asked Sonbae not to disturb everything that has to do with Seul Bi. After school, Woo Hyun made a secret plan to get Seul Bi's angel dress. He knew that without it, Seul Bi would not be able to fly away. He carefully hid the dress in a box in his room. Meanwhile, Song-yeol was feeling upset because he found out that his biological mother wanted to remarry. He stood outside the building, feeling miserable, and decided not to go home. On the way, Song-yeol ran into Woo Hyun and Seul Bi. They could tell something was wrong, so they invited Song-yeol to sleep in Woo Hyun's room for the night. That's when Song-yeol finally opened up about his feelings and shared that his mother got married again that day, which made him feel emotionally unstable. Woo Hyun understood how he felt and gave him space. Later that night, Woo Hyun went to the police station to tell Woo Jin that his son was staying with him. While Woo Hyun was away, Song Yeol took the opportunity to express his love to Seul Bi even though she only had feelings for Woo Hyun. Song Yeol promised to wait for her no matter what. Seul Bi was confused and didn't know how to respond.
뭐야?
왜 그래? 무슨 일이야?
Later, at dinner, Woo Hyun and Song Yeol got into an argument. Seul Bi, who was curious about what had happened between them, asked about it. Both of them denied that anything had happened, but Seul Bi could sense that something was off. During school vacation, Seul Bi invited Woo Hyun and Song Yeol to go to the sauna. They enjoyed their time there until they unexpectedly met Woo Hyun's father and Song Yeol's mother. While they were outside talking, Seul Bi and Woo Hyun were in the sauna room. Seul Bi looked sad when she saw the three of them together and realized that Woo Hyun had been left alone by his parents since childhood. He responded that he had no father or mother and she felt sorry for him. She wanted to explain her true identity as an angel, but before she could, Woo Hyun kissed her.
사실은
This made Song Yeol's heart sad, and he remained silent when Woo Jin asked him to take a bath together. Then he walked away with a blank look on his face. The next day, Seul Bi was surprised to see Song Yeol at school. He seemed distant and unresponsive when she tried to talk to him. Even Woo Hyun noticed something was off and grew concerned. During sports time, Song Yeol unexpectedly threw the ball hard and hit Woo Hyun in the stomach, causing him to double over in pain. Seul Bi and Ki-soo rushed to Woo Hyun's aid, but Seul Bi was shocked to see that Song Yeol was the one who hurt him. They all headed to the treatment room, with Song Yeol following behind. As they made their way to the treatment room, Jie happened to pass by and noticed Woo Hyun in pain. Ki-soo explained that Song Yeol had thrown the ball into his stomach. Enraged, Jie immediately scolded Song Yeol for his behavior. Everyone was taken aback by her outburst, but Jie quickly realized she had overreacted and apologized to Song Yeol before leaving. During recess, Ye-na approached Yong-eun and her friends, hoping to reconcile, but they quickly snubbed her and walked away. Frustrated and hurt, Ye-na took out her anger on Seul Bi and pushed her down the stairs. Song Yeol saw what happened and assumed it was Yong-eun's doing, but she denied any involvement and went to look for Ye-na. When she found Ye-na, Yong-eun grew angry and made it clear that she never asked Ye-na to push Seul Bi. Woo Hyun then joined them and confessed that he was never interested in Ye-na and never would be. After telling Ye-na to stay away from him, Yong-eun left with Woo Hyun. Left alone, Ye-na broke down in tears, realizing the harsh truth. That night, Song Yeol couldn't shake off the thoughts of Seul Bi and Woo Hyun's relationship. As he cleaned his clothes, Jie walked in and was surprised to see him. Thinking quickly, Song Yeol told her he was going to stay at Woo Hyun's for a few days. Knowing that Song Yeol was worried about Seul Bi, Jie finally allowed him to stay with Woo Hyun. Feeling like he had earned Jie's trust, Song Yeol thanked her and asked her to pack some food for Woo Hyun. He knew that Woo Hyun loved her cooking. However, when he arrived at Woo Hyun's house, he was met with immediate hostility. Despite bringing food as a peace offering, Woo Hyun was still angry with Song Yeol. Song Yeol even tried to make a joke about the food being his room rent, but it only made things worse. Seul Bi was accompanying Song Yeol to retrieve his belongings from his old home when Ye-na approached Woo Hyun to apologize for an earlier incident. However, Woo Hyun was no longer interested in Ye-na and rejected her apology. Feeling helpless, Ye-na suddenly hugged Woo Hyun, just as Song Yeol and Seul Bi arrived outside the house. Worried about Seul Bi getting hurt, Song Yeol tried to prevent her from entering the house, but she still witnessed what was going on inside. Song Yeol eventually asked Seul Bi to leave, and as they departed, Woo Hyun saw them. Song Yeol then explained to Seul Bi that there might have been a misunderstanding, but Seul Bi didn't want to let that be the issue. She knew that misunderstandings can cause problems, and she wanted to avoid them. Meanwhile, Song Yeol couldn't help but feel sorrowful about Seul Bi leaving, knowing that she trusted Woo Hyun completely and leaving no room for him. Seul Bi and Woo Hyun were at home, and Woo Hyun reminded Seul Bi of their promise to trust each other no matter what. However, Seul Bi was in a bad mood and left with a sullen face. Later that night, Song Yeol saw Woo Hyun holding onto a necklace and asked about it. Woo Hyun explained that it was a key necklace given to him by his mother when he was a child. His mother had a matching lock necklace, and they promised to always stay together even when they were apart. As Woo Hyun slept, Song Yeol still held onto the hope that Seul Bi would return his feelings, but she couldn't. For her, Song Yeol was just a friend, the best friend of both her and Woo Hyun. One day, at school, Song Yeol was with Jie when he suddenly expressed his desire to switch schools to forget about Seul Bi. Jie took his hand and understood that he was deeply in love with Seul Bi. She wished him the best and hoped that he would be okay. Later that night, Seul Bi goes to a cafe to meet Song-guk. There Song-guk tells her that everyone in the cafe is an angel turned into a human. Then Song-guk holds Seul Bi's hand and a strange mark appears on Seul Bi's wrist. But at the window, Jae-sog and his friends saw it all. Elsewhere, Woo Hyun, who was distributing flyers, suddenly got a call from Jae-sog. Woo Hyun panicked and immediately ran to find Seul Bi. When Seul Bi was going home, Jae-sog and his friends snatched the envelope that Seul Bi was carrying. Fortunately, Woo Hyun arrived on time. Woo Hyun, who saw Song-guk, remembered that he had met him in the library, who asked him to keep quiet and hide what Woo Hyun knew. Not long after, Mr. Yoon arrived and they immediately ran away. As Song-yeol searched for his father's lost wallet, he stumbled upon Jae's padlock necklace and became suspicious. He rushed to Woo Hyun's house to investigate. Meanwhile, Seul Bi discovered a paper envelope from Sok-hoon containing a warning that if a human touches a certain symbol, she will disappear from the world, and even from human memory. This meant that Woo Hyun might forget Seul Bi entirely. Just then, Song-yeol arrived and asked Seul Bi where Woo Hyun was. She said he was in the bath, and Song-yeol went straight to his room and matched Jae's necklace with his own. He realized that Woo Hyun was Jae's son. When Woo Hyun finished bathing and asked why Song-yeol was in his room, Song-yeol pushed him away. The following day, Song-yeol decided to skip school and hang out with Jae-sog's crew at the internet cafe. Things took a turn for the worse when they viciously attacked him beneath a nearby bridge. Just as things were about to get even more violent, Seul Bi suddenly appeared on the scene. Seeing that Jae-sog was about to strike her, his comrades restrained him, reminding him that they may be troublemakers, but they draw the line at hurting women and children. Despite being badly injured, Song-yeol tried to reason with Jae-sog, but Seul Bi intervened, embracing him tightly from behind and pleading for him to stop. Unbeknownst to them, Jae-sog snapped a photo of the embrace and sent it to Woo Hyun. When Woo Hyun arrived on the scene, he was furious to see Song-yeol being embraced by Seul Bi. Enraged, he shoved Song-yeol to the ground and demanded that Seul Bi leave immediately. One evening, Jae frantically searched for her lost necklace all over the house. Song-yeol, who witnessed this, confessed that he had thrown it in the trash. Despite his admission, Jae raced outside to the garbage bin to retrieve it. As she dug through the garbage, Song-yeol approached her, holding the necklace out for her to see. Suddenly, he demanded to know if Woo Hyun was his son. Despite Jae's efforts to explain the truth, Song-yeol was beyond angry and told her to leave his family for good. Completely distraught, Song-yeol headed to the school gym to vent his frustration. Unbeknownst to him, Jae-sog snatched his phone and sent a message to Seul Bi, saying that Song-yeol was trapped in the gym. When Song-yeol finished playing basketball, he discovered Jae-sog's message and raced to the gym to find Seul Bi. Once there, he discovered that she had been locked in the sports warehouse by Jae-sog. As Woo Hyun searched frantically for Seul Bi, she suddenly appeared before him, and the mark on her hand began to glow brightly.
서두르는 게 좋을걸? 괜찮아? 내가 널 놓은 거다, 새끼야.
Jae arrived at Woo Hyun's grandmother's grave the following day and apologized for being late, revealing to Woo Hyun that she was his biological mother. Woo Hyun, who had overheard their conversation, was livid with anger and immediately cut her off, telling her that he had no parents and kicking her out.
우연아, 내가 설명할게.
아니요. 아무 말도 하지 마세요.
내가 네 엄마야.
전 엄마도 아빠도 없습니다. 비켜주세요.
That night, Woo Hyun invited Song-yeol to meet with him. He told Song-yeol that he didn't need a mother and would leave Jae to Song-yeol alone. Just as he was about to leave, Song-yeol fired back, telling Woo Hyun that he was just like his mother, ambitious and driven. With that, Song-yeol left Woo Hyun alone. In another scene, Seul Bi was disposing of some trash from Woo Hyun's room when she stumbled upon a key necklace that was once dear to him. She was shocked to find it because she knew how much it meant to him. Feeling sad, she decided to keep the necklace in a drawer. Seul Bi was heartbroken because she knew that Woo Hyun's relationship with Song-yeol was falling apart. Meanwhile, Jae approached Woo Hyun to give him an envelope of money from his grandmother. Jae advised him that what he needed now was money because he had lost everything else. Woo Hyun poured out his frustrations to Jae, revealing how he had found his biological mother after a long search, only to discover that she had become the mother of his best friend. Feeling betrayed, Woo Hyun had sent his mother away. Jae begged Woo Hyun for a hug, but he rejected her and sent her away. Seul Bi overheard everything but was powerless to help. During an ethics lesson, Song-yeol posed an unexpected question to Jae and Seul Bi, asking for their thoughts on a mother who abandons her child. Jie answered cautiously but left the class abruptly after the question. Woo Hyun shot Song-yeol a piercing glare and later confronted him on the school rooftop, frustrated with his childish behavior. Woo Hyun expressed how important Song-yeol was to him, even more than his biological mother. Jie intervened as tensions rose, but Song-yeol backed away dangerously close to the edge of the building, hinting at suicide. Woo Hyun pleaded with him to stop his foolishness. Seul Bi rushed towards Song-yeol, but her path was blocked by a pile of chairs that fell. She noticed Seul Bi in the distance, purposely obstructing her. With no other option, Seul Bi used her powers to save Song-yeol. Woo Hyun panicked when he saw Seul Bi and rushed towards her, putting an end to the commotion. Jie used this opportunity to rescue Song-yeol from the edge of the building. After the incident, Jie asked Seul Bi to meet at a cafe. She suggested that Seul Bi live with her to put an end to the rumors about her living with Woo Hyun. Seul Bi declined the offer and asked for time to consider it. The following day at school, Seul Bi couldn't stop thinking about what Jie had said during their cafe conversation. The three of them, Seul Bi, Woo Hyun, and Song-yeol, used to be inseparable, but their relationship was now strained. Living with Woo Hyun had created numerous issues that Seul Bi didn't want to burden him with anymore. Later that afternoon, Seul Bi decided to put a padlock on a flower pot in front of their house. She handed Woo Hyun the key and told him that even though she was leaving their home, her heart would always remain there. Woo Hyun was confused by her words, but Seul Bi clarified that she was going to live with Jie to avoid any rumors about their living arrangement. After some thought, Woo Hyun agreed to let Seul Bi go and live with Jie. The next morning, Seul Bi woke up feeling unwell, but she still dragged herself to school because she was desperate to see Woo Hyun. Song-yeol noticed that she was sick and urged her to stay home, but Seul Bi's mind was fixated on seeing Woo Hyun. Song-yeol became annoyed with her insistence and barricaded her inside the room, forbidding her from leaving until she felt better. With no other choice, Seul Bi was left alone, feeling frustrated and hopeless. At school, Woo Hyun waited eagerly for Seul Bi's arrival, but to his disappointment, Song-yeol showed up instead. Furious and upset, Woo Hyun learned from Song-yeol that Seul Bi was too sick to come to school. Overcome with emotions, he chased after Song-yeol as he left, and in a fit of anger, gave him Seul Bi's phone before storming off. Despite Song-yeol's teasing and taunting, Woo Hyun eventually left, feeling lost and alone without Seul Bi by his side. As Jie returned home, she stumbled upon a worried and rushed Song-yeol who seemed too preoccupied to even acknowledge her presence. It was later revealed that Jae-seok had secretly taken a picture of them and showed it to Woo Hyun, hoping to uncover the truth behind their relationships. However, Woo Hyun brushed off his questions with a joke, only fueling Jae-seok's curiosity even more. Woo Jin, on the other hand, was furious with Jie for not revealing that she was actually Woo Hyun's mother. He felt betrayed that she had kept this secret from him, despite him always being honest with her. Jie tried to explain her reasoning, but Woo Jin was too angry to listen. As they argued, Seul Bi left her room, only to hear the heated argument between Song-yeol's parents. Seul Bi answered the door to find Woo Hyun holding a bag. Inside, Woo Jin, Jihye, and Song-yeol were already there. Without hesitation, Woo Hyun invited Woo Jin to stay as well, but Song-yeol became angry and threatened to leave if Woo Hyun didn't depart. Song-yeol left, leaving Jihye upset with Woo Hyun's sudden arrival. However, Woo Jin intervened and permitted Woo Hyun to stay. Woo Jin then left to chase after Song-yeol, and they ended up at a roadside stand for drinks. There, Woo Jin asked why Song-yeol hadn't disclosed that Woo Hyun was Jihye's son. Song-yeol didn't want to hurt his father by revealing the truth, and Woo Jin apologized for not understanding his son's intentions. During class, Jae-seok questioned Jihye about why Song-yeol and Seul Bi were living together in her house. Jihye was taken aback but finally admitted that Song-yeol was her son. The news immediately caused a commotion among the students. After school, Song-yeol and Seul Bi were in the park when a young child accidentally bumped into Song-yeol. Seul Bi helped the child up and stroked their head, causing the symbol on her wrist to glow. Back home, Song-yeol couldn't stop thinking about the symbol and drew it in his book. To his surprise, his drawing emitted a bright light. Fueled by his curiosity, Song-yeol sneaked into Seul Bi's room, causing her to worry about his suspicions. The following morning, Song-yeol remained curious about the symbol on Seul Bi's hand and decided to ask her about it. But Seul Bi remained silent, afraid of losing her memories with everyone. Suddenly, the symbol glowed brightly and Woo Hyun appeared out of nowhere to cover Song-yeol's mouth and urged him to remain quiet. Seul Bi used this opportunity to escape, and as soon as she was gone, Woo Hyun angrily threatened Song-yeol that he would beat him up if he ever did something like that again. At school, Song Yeol spoke with Woo Hyun one-on-one, still curious about Seul Bi's secret that Woo Hyun knew but refused to disclose. Woo Hyun urged Song Yeol not to talk about it anymore. In the broadcast room, Seul Bi was being curious and accidentally activated the school's speaker, which transmitted a private conversation between Woo Hyun and Song Yeol. Song Yeol used this opportunity to expose a secret, that Jie was actually Woo Hyun's biological mother who had left him when he was a child. After revealing this, Song Yeol immediately left. The next day at school, chaos erupted as parents approached Jie's car to confront her about the relationship with her son. Luckily, Woo Hyun and Seul Bi were able to escort Jie safely out of the situation. But the drama didn't end there. Woo Jin expressed regret for letting Woo Hyun live with him and blamed him for Song Yeol's suffering. Jie, already upset, vowed to never send her son away and to always take care of him, while Woo Hyun overheard the argument, feeling hurt and alone. The next day, the parents were still demanding Jie's expulsion from school. However, Seul Bi and her friends distributed forms to all students, asking for Jie to be allowed to stay. Even Jae Sog filled out the form, showing support. Later, Song Yeol was reading a book in his room when Jie came to apologize and ask for forgiveness. But instead of responding, Song Yeol took Jie's lock necklace and left. Jie begged for him to return it, but before she could get it back, Woo Hyun and Seul Bi arrived and witnessed Song Yeol push Jie until the necklace broke. This was the final straw for Woo Hyun, who lost his temper and was about to hit Song Yeol. In response, Woo Jin asked Woo Hyun to leave his house. After being kicked out of Woo Jin's house, Woo Hyun, Seul Bi, and Jie returned to their grandma's house. Jie was touched when she saw a childhood photo of Woo Hyun in grandma's room. Seul Bi comforted Jie and expressed her hope that Woo Hyun and Song Yeol could become friends again. The next day, during an impromptu exam, the exam questions disappeared and reappeared suddenly. Seul Bi suspected that Seul Bi was behind it all. After the exam, the last paper disappeared, and Jae Sog accused Seul Bi of taking it. However, Jie found the paper on the teacher's desk, and they left the class together. Once inside the teacher's room, Jie carelessly misplaced the exam sheet on the desk. Little did she know, one of her students overheard her conversation with Mr. Yoon, and soon rumors spread throughout the class that Seul Bi had lost the exam sheet. Caught in the crossfire, Seul Bi found herself isolated in a corner until Song Yeol came to her rescue and whisked her away, leaving Woo Hyun to watch from the sidelines. Afterwards, Woo Hyun extended an olive branch to Song Yeol by inviting him to meet at the park. It was there that he made a surprising request that Seul Bi stay at Song Yeol's house and not return to Woo Hyun's, no matter what. As they arrived at the shop, Woo Hyun mustered up the courage to suggest that Seul Bi stay with Song Yeol instead of him. His heart ached at the thought of her disappearing, but he knew it was for the best. Seul Bi was crestfallen upon hearing this news, but she put on a brave face despite the pain in her heart. Later that night, Seul Bi emerged from Woo Hyun's house with her suitcase in tow. Song Yeol kindly took her bag, and the two of them left Woo Hyun standing alone. As he watched Seul Bi walk away, tears welled up in his eyes and he couldn't hold them back any longer. The following day at school, Seul Bi overheard Jie expressing her confusion over the missing exam sheet from the day before. Determined to solve the mystery, Seul Bi scoured the entire school until she stumbled upon a torn test sheet in the gymnasium. Suddenly, Seul Bi appeared and urged Seul Bi to abandon her human form and return to being an angel. But Seul Bi paid him no mind and instead focused on collecting the scattered exam sheets. That night, Seul Bi worked tirelessly to piece the torn exam sheets back together, but she eventually grew too tired and fell asleep. Unbeknownst to her, Woo Hyun had been searching for her and stumbled upon her in the classroom. He quietly sat beside her and helped her with the exam sheets. When Seul Bi awoke, she was shocked to see Woo Hyun by her side, tears of sadness welling up in her eyes at the realization of how much he cared for her. The next day, Seul Bi returned Jie's exam sheet, explaining that she had found it and done her best to reunite it with its rightful owner. Intrigued, Jie pressed Seul Bi to reveal the secret she had been keeping. Seul Bi remained silent until Song Yeol suddenly appeared and urged Jie to drop the matter. On their way home, Seul Bi and Song Yeol walked together until Seul Bi received a message that Woo Hyun was sick. Kisu had sent the message, and Seul Bi immediately rushed to Woo Hyun's house. When they arrived, Song Yeol prevented Seul Bi from entering, brushing her hand aside so rudely that she fainted. Inside the house, Woo Hyun appeared fine as he descended the stairs. However, he suddenly clutched his chest and fell to the ground in pain. Despite the agony, he struggled to make his way to the exit of the house. Jie was taken aback when she arrived home and found Woo Hyun lying motionless on the floor. She quickly rushed him to her room, where she looked at his face and remembered their past. Jie thought back to the time when she had gone swimming with Woo Hyun. While they were swimming, Jie had been so focused on her cell phone that she failed to notice when Woo Hyun began to struggle and eventually drowned. Meanwhile, Seul Bi suddenly appeared and, using her strength, knocked Jie's phone out of her hand. Startled by Seul Bi's sudden appearance, Jie looked down and saw that her son was drowning. Without hesitation, she leaped into the water to save him. Back to the present, Song-guk and Mr. Yoon went to the library. There they met Woo Hyun, who happened to be there too. Song-guk went straight to a quiet place to talk one-on-one with Woo Hyun. Song-guk asked why Woo Hyun was looking for him because the symbol on Seul Bi's wrist was getting brighter. Of course, Woo Hyun was shocked. Song-guk could tell that even though he hadn't said anything. Woo Hyun finally told him that the students had started to get suspicious and that Seul Bi's marks looked clearer than before. Hearing that, Song-guk asked Woo Hyun to wait for the sign to disappear, otherwise Seul Bi would really disappear. The students were on a field trip to a television broadcast building, and after the briefing ended, Seul Bi didn't seem quite right and disappeared into the restroom. It turned out that Woo Hyun and Song-yeol were waiting for her outside. When Seul Bi emerged, Woo Hyun quickly gathered all the students, except Jae-sug, Seul Bi, and Song-yeol. Joo-ah joined them and began handing out leaflets that revealed Seul Bi's true nature as an angel. The leaflet explained that if the symbol on Seul Bi's wrist was glowing, the students should close their eyes and pretend not to see it. As the students read the leaflet, they began to understand Seul Bi's situation and started passing the leaflets out to everyone. Jae-sug stumbled upon Seul Bi sitting weakly in the garden. As he reached out to help her, the symbol on Seul Bi's wrist suddenly glowed, and Jae-sug felt a strange energy coursing through his body. But before he could make sense of what was happening, Song-yeol arrived and forcefully pulled Jae-sug away, revealing that everything was part of Seonbi's plan. Seonbi was infuriated with Song-yeol for ruining his plan, so he used his powers to eliminate Seul Bi. In the blink of an eye, Seul Bi vanished, leaving Song-yeol seething with anger towards Jae-sug. He grabbed Jae-sug by the collar and demanded that he find Seul Bi as soon as possible. The news of Seul Bi's disappearance spread. Woo Hyun and Song-yeol ran to look for Seul Bi. It turned out that Seonbi moved Seul Bi to the warehouse. He tried to make Seul Bi return to being an angel. While about to use his powers, Seonbi heard Woo Hyun's voice calling Seul Bi from the television broadcast. While holding his sore chest, Woo Hyun began to express all his feelings for Seul Bi. Of course, everyone who saw Woo Hyun's broadcast was sad. Suddenly Seonbi appeared and pointed his hand at the TV screen. But nothing happened, because Song-guk already held Seonbi's hand and told him to leave. Meanwhile, Woo Hyun cried because he was afraid he would lose Seul Bi forever. Suddenly Seul Bi appeared from behind and hugged Woo Hyun. In brief, Seul Bi and Woo Hyun arrived back at the building, where they were welcomed by their friends. Joo-ah then gave Seul Bi a ribbon to wear on her wrist, and to Seul Bi's surprise, all of her friends had tied ribbons on their wrists to protect her secret. Woo Hyun then tied the ribbon cloth to Seul Bi's wrist, and she reciprocated by doing the same to him. Later on, Song-yeol was lost in thought in his room, reminiscing about the time when Seul Bi hugged Woo Hyun from behind. He then decided to give up on Seul Bi and asked her to go back to Woo Hyun. After carrying Seul Bi's bag out of the house, Song-yeol leaned against the door and let her go back to Woo Hyun. As the evening drew on, Seul Bi remained outside Woo Jin's house, anxiously waiting for his return. Suddenly, Jae-sug appeared and confronted her with the leaflets that his friends had distributed. He was furious that everyone had kept Seul Bi's secret from him and he cornered her against the front door. Desperately, Seul Bi knocked on the door and called for Song-yeol, but he was already fast asleep. Suddenly, Seul Bi collapsed on the ground, weakened and helpless. When Jae-sug attempted to touch her, a bright light suddenly emanated from her, knocking him down. The next day, Woo Hyun approached Jae-sug and begged him not to reveal Seul Bi's secret, revealing that he would be alone without her. Surprisingly, Jae-sug remained silent, deep in thought about Woo Hyun's words. Let me tell you a story about Woo Hyun, Seul Bi, and Song-yeol, three friends who were walking together one day. Suddenly, Woo Hyun stopped in his tracks and reached out his hand towards Song-yeol, claiming that he was his elder brother since he was born before him. Song-yeol was taken aback, but before he could react, Woo Hyun pulled him into a tight embrace. Song-yeol was about to retaliate, but luckily, Woo Hyun sought refuge behind Seul Bi. Later, Woo Hyun and Seul Bi sat together in the garden, and Woo Hyun revealed his mother's lock necklace. Seul Bi then produced the key necklace that Woo Hyun had discarded earlier. Woo Hyun placed the lock necklace around Seul Bi's neck and then put the key necklace around his own neck, symbolizing their bond and their commitment to always stay together. One day, Song-yeol was packing his bags at home, intending to leave because he was afraid that his feelings for Seul Bi would only continue to grow stronger if he stayed close to her. He knew that Seul Bi only had eyes for Woo Hyun. That same night, Seul Bi learned that Song-yeol had left home and immediately asked Woo Hyun to help find him. But as Song-yeol was crossing the road, Seonbi used his strength to move a truck and tried to hit him. Luckily, Woo Hyun and Seul Bi arrived just in time to save Song-yeol, but in the process, Woo Hyun was injured and rushed to the hospital. Song-yeol was being treated after the incident with Seonbi, but he was devastated to learn from Jie that Seul Bi had disappeared without a trace. 2 years passed, and on a rainy day, Woo Hyun took shelter from the rain. Suddenly, a girl appeared next to him, and he was surprised to see that she was wearing the same necklace as Seul Bi. However, he couldn't see her face because she was holding an umbrella and quickly walked away. Woo Hyun was left standing there in silence, staring after the girl as she disappeared into the distance. Song-yeol was at a cafe with a woman, but he seemed disinterested in her. Just as he was about to leave, a waitress came to apologize for making a mistake, but Song-yeol had already left without noticing that the waitress was Seul Bi. Later that night, Woo Hyun helped a drunk Song-yeol back to his house, with Seul Bi silently walking beside them. When they reached the house, Seul Bi stopped in front of a tteokbokki shop and noticed a job posting. The following day, Woo Jin was taken aback to see Seul Bi walking into the shop, looking to apply for a job. Seul Bi had no recollection of her past, which left Woo Jin bewildered. Despite this, he immediately hired her on the spot. When Woo Hyun returned home, he was thrilled to see Seul Bi, but she pushed him away. He was devastated when he realized that Seul Bi had lost her memory. As Seul Bi wiped his tears, her memories from the past began to resurface, making her feel disoriented. In the evening, Woo Hyun drove Seul Bi home to the front of her house. There Woo Hyun took out his hand to get acquainted. Seul Bi shook Woo Hyun's hand and recognized himself too. But suddenly Sonbae came out and asked Seul Bi to come in, because Sonbae is now Seul Bi's brother. Because he was curious about his brother Seul Bi's behavior, Woo Hyun finally met Song-guk. There Song-guk explained that his brother Seul Bi was an angel who had become human. Then 2 years ago, Seul Bi sacrificed herself to save Woo Hyun, and because of that Seul Bi ended up losing her memory. Song-guk hoped that Woo Hyun's love could make Seul Bi's memory come back faster. Later, Woo Hyun visited Sonbae at his home, where they conversed in the garden. Upon seeing Sonbae carrying a bag, Woo Hyun inquired if he was departing. Sonbae revealed that he was leaving and entrusting Seul Bi to Woo Hyun. Before parting ways, Sonbae imparted a valuable lesson: genuine love has the power to rekindle lost memories. When Seul Bi returned from work, Woo Hyun appeared suddenly at her side. As they crossed the street, a car unexpectedly hurtled towards them. Without hesitation, Woo Hyun leaped to save Seul Bi, leaving her disoriented and confused as he walked away. As the night wore on, Seul Bi trudged home, her steps slow and heavy with emotion. Tears streamed down her face as memories flooded her mind. Now that her recollections had fully returned, Woo Hyun, unaware of this development, urged Seul Bi to go home and rest. However, just as Woo Hyun was about to depart, Seul Bi called out to him, offering an apology for not remembering him. He immediately wrapped her in a tight embrace, overjoyed that she had regained her memories.
슬비야,
기다리게 해서
보고 싶었어.
The moral lesson that we can learn from the story is sometimes help can come from unexpected sources. Even if we don't understand someone's actions or motives, we should try to appreciate their efforts to help us. It's important not to judge others too quickly, as they may be offering their support in the best way they know how. We should always be grateful for the help we receive and be kind to those who offer it, even if it seems silly or unconventional at first.